Hello. I wonder if you've ever played the game Chinese Whispers. This is a game that we play fairly regularly at Girls and Boys Brigade because it's a good game to calm the children down, especially if they've been playing active running around games. This game involves listening very carefully, and what you do is you give a message to a child who then whispers the message around the circle to the other children. And when the message has been all the way around the circle, then the last child has to share what that message is. And it's normally at this point that we find the message has changed quite a lot because people perhaps haven't been listening or they're messing around a bit and want to change it. The game is called Chinese Whispers, supposedly because of the confused messages that passed verbally from tower to tower along the Great Wall of China. Now, at times in our life, it can be difficult to hear messages, and we have to carefully listen. The more we get to know someone's voice and the more focused we are, then the easier it can be to understand. I think this is the same with God, because the more time that we spend with God and the more that we try to listen, the easier it can be. This week, the lectionary reading is all about the calling of the young Samuel. Now, as a children's and youth worker, I particularly love this story because it shows that you are never too young to be called from God. And God has plans for everyone, no matter how old they are. Now, as a little bit of background about this story of Samuel, his mother Hannah wanted a child for a very long time, and she prayed to God. And at last, when his son was born, she named him Samuel, which means God hears. And as a thank you to God, she gave him back to God to grow up and serve in the temple. Samuel helped a man named Eli, who was the priest in the temple. But God had very special plans for him, and one night he called him and woke him from his sleep. At first, Samuel didn't understand that it was God calling him. He thought it was Eli, the priest. So when Samuel went to answer Eli, Eli told him that he hadn't called him, and Samuel went back to bed. But the Lord wasn't done with him. He called him again, and Samuel answered the Lord's call, and he was given some rather tough information. He didn't announce that Samuel would be a great king or that he'd be rich and wonderful things would happen to him. God actually told him that some bad things were coming for Eli's family. Sometimes God has things for us that are not easy to hear, but they are still very much real messages from him. This wouldn't be the first time that Samuel had a challenging message from God. Samuel grew up to be a very important prophet and servant of the Lord. He anointed both Saul and later David to be kings of Israel, and he had a close walk with God. He was, as his name states, heard by God, and also heard and listened to God. The Lord used him in amazing ways. Hannah and Samuel were willing to allow God to work his will, and great things happened. And when we open up to what God has for us, anything is possible. This story is wonderful because it reminds us that God knows us and loves us. He knows our names and he calls us by them. He has a plan and a purpose for our lives. We don't know what will happen to us later, but the Lord knows, and he will use us for his glory if we let him. Amen.